In popular culture, the first horseman of the apocalypse is pestilence. This interpretation comes from ancient Judaism, and for our purposes today it'll work. In sacred scripture, the horsemen read a little differently, but the four horsemen, with the popular understanding, are pestilence, famine, war, and death. The headlines cover pestilence pretty well, and what follows pestilence? Famine. Now, a disclaimer. No, I don't think the horsemen have arrived. What I think we're going through is a warning of what is to come if we as the church militant don't get our acts together. If we as the created people in the image and likeness of God do not stop sinning. That having been said, let's talk about famine, because you might not be happy to know that we are in for a rough year, most likely, unless things change with the economic consequences of what I'll refer to the various things as the various ways I've been referring to it for the last couple of months. As you're aware, the world is in the grips of the fear surrounding the crisis of our day, and as a consequence, many employers have shuttered their doors. What isn't getting that widely reported are the farmers plowing under their crops, putting down their cattle and livestock, and many food processing factories closing their doors temporarily due to the closure of many restaurants. And this is having a direct impact on some grocery stores around the country as well, with reports coming in from all over the United States of grocery chains limiting the purchase of some meat products and some produce simply not being available despite it being spring and the usual spring crops normally being available at this time. But this is anecdotal. Let's get into some fun, hard reporting, straight from the source. From the United Nations. Headline: As famines of biblical proportion loom, Security Council urged to act fast. Now that headline sounds pretty grim, but let's get to the article. Quote, noting that the global spread of the thing that should not be this year has sparked the worst humanitarian crisis since World War II, Executive Director of the World Food Program, David Beasley, pointed to deepening crises, more frequent natural disasters, and changing weather patterns, saying, "We're already facing a perfect storm." As millions of civilians and conflict-scarred nations teeter on the brink of starvation, he said, famine is a very real and dangerous possibility. Mr. Beasley painted a grim picture of 135 million people facing crisis levels of hunger, or worse, coupled with an additional 130 million on the edge of starvation prompted by the affliction, noting that WFP currently offers a lifeline to nearly 100 million people, up from about 80 million just a few years ago. If we can't reach these people with the life-saving assistance they need, our analysis shows that 300,000 people could starve to death every single day over a 3-month period, he upheld. This does not include the increase of starvation due to the affliction. End quote. Okay, let's do some math. We're looking at 265 million people facing starvation, and 300,000 people possibly succumbing to starvation every single day over a 3-month period. That's about 27 million people who will die, and that's a conservative estimate. And remember, he says this does not include the increase of starvation due to the, shall we say, affliction. Now, why is that? Because one of the consequences of the first horseman is the arrival of the second, famine. One often follows the other, and this time it looks like it'll be because our ruling class are either morons or exploiting this situation for their own game. Pick one, because it really can't be any other reason that the breadbasket of America is still largely closed for business. Let's look at some specifics, though, because I know some people don't believe what I'm saying still. Headline from NBC News. Groceries could see meat shortages by end of week amid plant closings. Consumers could start seeing shortages by Friday at supermarket meat counters, experts say. Headline from Bloomberg. Americans on cusp of meat shortage with food chain breaking down. Now you might be saying, Anthony, those are leftist sources. Why should we trust them? Fine, straight from the horse's mouth, so to speak. Here's a letter published in the New York Times written by the CEO of Tyson Foods. I'll read it mostly verbatim, omitting only the name of the beer bug and its related names, as well as the bio information that letter closes out with at the very end. A delicate balance, feeding the nation and keeping our team members healthy. Written by John Tyson of Tyson Foods. Sometimes life changes in the blink of an eye, and the world as we know it is different. Anxiety, doubt, and the fear of the unknown are now our constant companions. As chairman of Tyson Foods, I am grateful for our team members, but most of all I care about their health and safety. They come to work every day to feed our country with safe, sustainable, quality, and affordable food. Our team members produce food to go on family tables, in lunch boxes, and picnic baskets, for takeout orders and wherever else you may choose to eat. Even as the affliction is changing everything, Tyson Foods is rising to the challenge. Over these last few months, our team members have done what they always have, put food on the tables of millions of homes around the country. But we aren't just feeding the nation. We are feeding communities, our friends, our neighbors, and our own families. I am thankful for our team members' commitment to something bigger than a job. Now, Tyson Foods is facing a new set of challenges. In small communities around the country where we employ over 100,000 hard-working men and women, we are being forced to shutter our doors. This means one thing. The food supply chain is vulnerable. As pork, beef, and chicken plants are being forced to close, even for short periods of time, millions of pounds of meat will disappear from the supply chain. This means one thing. The food supply chain is vulnerable. As pork, beef, and chicken plants are being forced to close, even for short periods of time, millions of pounds of meat will disappear from the supply chain. As a result, there will be limited supply of our products available in grocery stores until we are able to reopen our facilities that are currently closed. Tyson Foods has a responsibility to feed our nation and the world. The government bodies at the national, state, county, and city levels must unite in a comprehensive, thoughtful, and productive way to allow our team members to work in safety without fear, panic, or worry. The private and public sectors must come together. As a country, this is our time to show the world what we can do when working together. In addition to meat shortages, this is a serious food waste issue. Farmers across the nation simply will not have anywhere to sell their livestock to be processed, when they could have fed the nation. Millions of animals, chickens, pigs, and cattle will be depopulated because of the closure of our processing facilities. The food supply chain is breaking. We have a responsibility to feed our country. It is as essential as healthcare. This is a challenge that should not be ignored. Our plants must remain operational so that we can supply food to our families in America. This is a delicate balance because Tyson Foods places team member safety as our top priority. Here is what we have done to date to protect our team members and our plants. In January, we formed an affliction task force. Since then, we put in place numerous measures to protect our team members across the nation. The company's efforts have included taking worker temperatures and installing more than 150 infrared walk-through temperature scanners in our facilities, securing a supply of face coverings before the CDC recommended their use, and now requiring them in all company facilities, and conducting additional daily deep cleaning and sanitizing. We've implemented social distancing measures such as installing workstation dividers and providing more break room space. We've also relaxed our attendance policy to encourage workers to stay at home when they're sick or feel uneasy about coming to work. And in a few circumstances we haven't been able to meet our own standards, we've voluntarily closed operations, only resuming when adequate safety measures were in place. We are also encouraging our team members to continue the social distancing practices we have established within our operations, before and after shifts, and in their communities. We must do everything we can to prevent their exposure to the affliction outside of our facilities and not contribute to community spread in our plant localities. Tyson is waiving the waiting period to qualify for short-term disability, so workers can immediately get paid if they get sick. We've also waiving the copay, coinsurance, and deductible for doctor visits for the affliction testing, as well as eliminating pre-approval or pre-authorization steps, waiving copays for the use of telemedicine, and relaxing refill limits for 30-day prescriptions of maintenance medication. Tyson Foods is also paying approximately $60 million in thank you bonuses to 116,000 frontline workers and Tyson truckers who support our operations every day. We committed $13 million to support critical needs in our local communities. That includes $2 million in community grants and more than $11 million worth of food and meals donated by the company since March 11th. Over the coming days, we will make more product donations equal to an additional 100 million meals. This year marks the 85th anniversary of Tyson Foods, etc., etc., etc. Now, the good news is that the President of the United States has used the powers granted to him by the Defense Production Act to force the processing plants to stay open and has given them immunity from liability, which should keep some of the food supply going for the time being, as long as employees don't succumb to the fear affliction being promoted by the opinion makers. If they do and they choose to stay home, well, then who knows what will happen next. And that's only in America. I frankly have no idea what's happening on this front in other Western countries and in the underdeveloped countries of the world. If America was 100% open for business, we'd probably be able to supply grain for a lot of those countries. I mean, we do produce that much of it, as well as some basic fruits and the like. But we're not, and many governors are keeping it that way for their own reasons. So what do? I don't have the answer to that question, but I do know this. If countries remain shut down as is, then widespread hunger is coming, and it will affect the most vulnerable populations of the world. Letting that happen is not only unchristian, it is the spirit of Antichrist to let the poorest starve out of our own fear.